hardest job to protect and serve the members of our community. And that is exactly what we intend to do.
Oh man, whoever put this together was freaking brilliant. I have tears in my eyes. Oh, goodness gracious. I'm okay. I'm okay. Let's get rolling. Good morning, Wisconsin. It is now Monday, February 28th, 2011. Day 14 of the protest against Governor Walker's war on organized labor. And I'll be your host, Le Voz de la Resistance. Man, did I have a long night last night. Ooh, did not go to sleep at a decent time. Not at all. But, oh, that's okay. You know, we have a lot to talk about today, so let's just jump right into it, shall we? And remember, you're not allowed to watch this broadcast unless you agree to press share, because what we're going to talk about today, every Wisconsinite needs to hear. There's a lot of propaganda coming from the other side saying that public employees are drains in the economy, that they don't contribute, that they suck the blood out of taxpayers, them and their dirty public unions. So people love to say that it's time for them to contribute their fair share like everybody else. Check out this clip from Alberta Darling, the Republican senator from the 5th District here in Wisconsin.
The Wisconsin family has really done more than their share to keep their families together and keep their jobs together. Now it's time for our state employees and our government to do our share.
Well, see what she's saying? She and her party are scapegoating public employees for the nation's problem, for Wisconsin's problems, and for the nation's problems. The same way that Ronald Reagan won the presidency largely by scapegoating the supposed welfare queens, what he called welfare queens, lazy women leeching off the system, unwilling to work. And we later learned this was entirely fictional. It didn't exist, but he made it up that he scapegoated them to win election. In the exact same vein, the assault on public employees is based on an entirely fictional premise. So she says that it's time for state employees and government workers to make sacrifices like the private sector has already done. This is a narrative that public employees have not sacrificed, and it's utterly false. As we discussed in broadcast number 5, public employees have in fact seen increases in their health premiums. They have taken pay cuts in the form of furloughs. They have had freezes put on any pay raises. And they say that taxpayers pay 100% of a public employee's pension, which is also utterly false. And they say that public employees need to tighten their belts the same way that Wisconsin's working families have, and the same way that Wisconsin's taxpayers have, forgetting that public employees, who do they think that public employees are? Public employees are Wisconsin's working families. They are taxpayers. Jesus. And Leah Vukmir, remember, we looked at her interview in broadcast number 5 from the Heritage Foundation, Republican senator from the 5th District. She continues the narrative. She says that the reasons for California's economic problems are public unions.
We don't want to become California. California's biggest problem was the public employee benefits.
Benefits granted by unions, public unions. Which is funny. It's really funny because typically economists look to Proposition 13, as the reason for California's budget catastrophe. For those who aren't aware, Proposition 13, is an amendment to the California Constitution passed in, I believe, 1978. Fact check me, but I believe it was 1978. An amendment to the California Constitution which severely limits property taxation and forced the Californian government to make cuts to social services and education, public education, because one of the state's largest, if not the largest, sources of revenue, property taxation, was taken away. It wasn't public employees, but now that the state's revenue is handicapped, they get the blame. Lovely! Scott Walker would love to do the same thing here. This is why the legislature has pushed through a law requiring a 2/3 supermajority in the Senate to increase taxation. And they've outright come out and said that they want to make that into a constitutional amendment. And thankfully, in order to make a constitutional amendment in Wisconsin, it has to be voted on and passed by 2 successive legislatures. So in all likelihood, we'll have them out of office before they can destroy our state economy, like California's. But this is all part of an effort to make the United States more in line with Republican ideals, particularly privatization and free market. See, there is an A to B path. It's very linear. First, you handicap the state's ability to tax and its ability to raise taxes, as was done in California with this constitutional amendment, Proposition 13, that destroyed property taxation. Then, once a major source of the state's income is eliminated, it has no choice but to turn to fiscal frugality by cutting social services, any and all social services, public education, healthcare, welfare. Those are the biggies. Workers will object when you do this, and so to free your hand, you need to eliminate the unions. You need to eliminate their ability to collectively bargain. Because, see, if a state can't tax and goes ahead and tries to maintain those social services, public education, healthcare, welfare, all that jazz, if it tries to go ahead without cutting spending, it will destroy its own economy. And this is exactly what happened to California. And in the end, once those social services, public education, healthcare, welfare, being the biggies again, are drained fiscally and they implode, you can privatize them. And booyah, you allow the free market to reign. This is called starving the beast. This is starving the beast. And it's Reaganomics 101. And as a bonus, not only do you get the free market to reign, but those social services are also sources of democratic power. And by killing them off, you weaken, if not destroy, the entire Democratic Party. In 2010, of the top 10 contributors to political campaigns, 7 were corporations donated to Republicans, and 3 were unions donating to Democrats. You kill the unions, and all the money goes to Republicans, who then use that money to win elections, garner political appointments, etc. This is a game of thrones, in which the end game is the elimination of the Democratic Party as a political rival. So, what has Scott Walker done? In accordance with his ideology, he refuses to tax. He's completely against taxation. In fact, he's passed tax cuts even while complaining about the deficit. But see, that makes sense that he do that. It totally makes sense because he doesn't see taxation as a way to fix the budget. And not only does he refuse to tax, but he's passed a law making it very hard to pass any more tax legislation or increase taxes. And he would like to make it into a constitutional amendment later on down the road, as was done in California, which would make it nearly impossible to increase tax or pass any tax legislation in the future. Since Wisconsin then will not be able to garner revenue from taxation, it has to cut spending to public education, health care, which we call Badger Care, welfare, Wisconsin Works, any social services here in Wisconsin that the Democratic Party of Wisconsin stands by. These cuts are already happening. They'll be announced in the state budget tomorrow. And in order to make those cuts without taxing, We need to eliminate the ability of workers to unionize and collectively bargain, or else they will, of course, resist. And this will ultimately lead either to the death of the public sector or the economic destruction of Wisconsin, as we've seen in California. Remember Leah Vukmir? Remember what she said?
We don't want to become California.
So in a sense, she's right. Those public unions in California are drains on their economy because California, without the ability to tax, because they removed it, has attempted to keep its public sector alive anyway and killed itself in the process. If Republicans were to succeed here in doing the same, then any government service you depend on has to die in order for the state to survive economically. Once they're all dead, all those programs, their functions will be privatized. This is Reaganomics, again, 101. Government is not the problem, government is the problem, starving the beast. Wisconsin is facing an existential threat right now. If the governor wins, then in the future we will have two choices: privatize or die. And in the process, the Democratic Party of Wisconsin will be nullified. Walker wanted to do this all in 1 week. It was a blitzkrieg attack, and people wonder why the 14 exiled themselves to deny quorum, to buy time for opposition to form and organize. All of you, every one of you out there protesting and working for the cause, has stopped them for now. You've slowed them down, but you haven't beaten them. If they get a quorum, they will kill the unions, and from there, as Walker himself says, he is the first domino. This is the 7th broadcast of the Voice of Wisconsin Resistance. Keep resisting, Wisconsin. Solidarity.